Hey everyone, the purpose of today's video is for me to issue a correction and ultimately an apology for the previous video that I made about Starfield. I really don't like fake news and false leaks and rumors in the games industry. I think they can be really detrimental, in particular to game devs, and just help push out false narratives and perceptions about them, the state of the games that they're working on, etc. But what I really don't like is when I get caught up in that machine, and through my videos just push out those leaks and rumors which really don't have enough credibility for me to be reporting on in the first place. And unfortunately, that's exactly what I did with my previous video on Starfield. So first and foremost, I do want to say I'm sorry for that. I try really hard in my videos to ensure I'm presenting the proper facts and the real news, the accurate news. And when I am talking about leaks and rumors, to ensure that I'm contextualizing them properly. So if something is a credible leak, providing the research to back that up. But if something is merely an internet rumor, saying exactly that and not using misleading titles or thumbnails. And as I said, I failed in that regard yesterday. So I am really sorry. I'm going to keep working hard to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But it would be silly of me not to issue correction and to admit that I made a mistake to all of you. But more importantly, I think what I want to do with today's video is to ensure that I present you the proper facts and research that I should have provided in my video yesterday. I don't have an excuse for it. It's on me. It was my mistake and I should have done it. My excuse of me being tired after work and wanting to get to bed as quickly as possible is not good enough, especially when I'm talking about, as I said, the products that game devs have been working on for years. I am really sorry in particular to Bethesda Game Studios for helping push out that fake narrative or that false narrative that Starfield is in a bad shape, when it might be or it might not be. The reality is that we don't know, and I shouldn't have pushed out that rumor without doing the proper research. So in the description below, I have done that. I've included as many sources as possible for us to get to the bottom of the leak and the rumor, I should say, that I talked about in yesterday's video. So what was yesterday's video about? Essentially there was a poster on Resetera who, before the developer direct held by Xbox and Bethesda, they essentially said, I heard rumors that Xbox and Bethesda are going to announce a new game called Hi-Fi Rush by Tango Gameworks, and it's going to be available to play later today. And as it turns out, that was true. They did release and announce Hi-Fi Rush, and it was available to play later that day. And then that same person said, well, it looks like I was right. Here is more of what I was told by a source. And that's when they went into information about Starfield not being in a good state. If it was released in June, it wouldn't be in a good state, about how Microsoft has lost a bunch of money on Azure, etc., etc. And I attached so much credibility to this person because I thought they were really the only person before the developer direct to come out and say Hi-Fi Rush is going to be announced and be available later today. All right. I didn't do enough research to figure that whether that was true or not, in fact, and I attached so much credibility to them that I just made the video and talked about it, right? But as I've dug deeper, and there were things that you had to pull from podcasts at certain timestamps and threads on Reddit, etc. But as you delved in deeper, it turns out that this person was not really the first person to report on Hi-Fi Rush being at the developer direct. And because of that, their latest statements about Starfield and about it being in a bad state really need to be called into question, and in all likelihood are fake. I'm not accusing this person of being a liar, but all I am pointing out now in this video is all the other evidence and research which suggests that they were not the first person to report on Hi-Fi Rush, and as a result, it's likely that in their first post that they were just pulling two and two together and making logical conclusions based on information that other people had already said. So let me provide that information. Again, all the links are in the description below, and then we can get to the crux of it. So first of all, as I mentioned in my previous video, there was a trademark application for Hi-Fi Rush dating back a couple of years. Specifically, it was first filed on the 21st of December 2020 by ZeniMax, and at that stage, for the next few years, publicly anyways, no one really knew whether it was attached to Tango Gameworks or not. But we knew that ZeniMax had made that application for the trademark of Hi-Fi Rush, so it was probably going to be a game. Then we didn't really hear much about it, again publicly, until the Xbox Era podcast by Jeff Grubb on the 24th of December 2022, so towards the latter end of last year. At that stage, Jeff Grubb was asked a question at specifically 41 minutes and 10 seconds in, if he could just break some Xbox news. It was essentially a super chat, and Jeff was responding to that question. Jeff said about the early Xbox event, when it wasn't announced, we didn't really know if it was called Developer Direct or anything like that. Jeff Grubb was one of the first people to reveal a source that told him there was going to be an event in Q1. Could have been January, February, March, etc. So he said about that event, the early Xbox event in 2023, he's heard about it from sources, and one of the games in there will be a Pentiment level game from a first-party studio that is not Obsidian, but from a different studio. So that is what he said at that point. And then later in the podcast, at 1 hour, 25 minutes and 36 seconds in, he was asked about whether Tango Gameworks' new game that they're working on is actually Hi-Fi Rush or not. At that stage, Jeff said he does not know. So he knew that there was going to be an event of some sort by Xbox and Bethesda, that there was going to be some sort of game that was like Pentiment, but not by Obsidian. And separately, he didn't know whether Hi-Fi Rush was actually Tango Gameworks' game. But according to people on a thread on Resetera, again linked in the description below, Jeff at some stage, whether in the podcast or on a different forum, I could not specify where this comment was made, but apparently he did later confirm that when he was talking about one of those Pentiment level style games, that it was coming from Tango Gameworks. He still did not make the connection of Tango Gameworks and Hi-Fi Rush, but he did clarify, according to several people on that Resetera thread, that he said that that game was going to be from Tango Gameworks in the Developer Direct. So that's what happened at that stage. And then after that, there was an Xbox 2 podcast about 4 weeks ago. It was a live stream, so I can't specify the specific date. But Rand Althor 19 in a podcast with Jez Corden had a bit of speculation about when Hi-Fi Rush could actually be released. And he essentially said the following, that there's a good chance that Hi-Fi Rush could actually launch by the end of the year, i.e. 2023. So nothing based on actual speculation or actual leaks or rumors, I should say, or an actual source. But he said that there's a good chance the game might actually launch by the end of 2023. And it turned out to be right, but that was more his speculation. And then there was a potential leak or rumor on Reddit. And that is linked in the description below. About 1 month ago, it summarized a few of the different Hi-Fi Rush rumors that were going around at the time. And some random person in the comment, again, a month ago, said that he made a post previously about Hi-Fi Rush that was actually deleted by one of the mods in a different thread. I think it was in R Gaming Leaks. And in that post, he clarified that he said Hi-Fi Rush was indeed being made by Tango Gameworks, and it was a rhythm-based brawler. It looked kind of like Jet Set Radio, and it is set in Japan. That, from what I can see, is the earliest connection of Hi-Fi Rush to Tango Gameworks, and that person got the concept pretty closely. It was pretty accurate with that, especially calling it a rhythm-based brawler. That was something that we didn't really know. Could you kind of infer it from the name of the game, Hi-Fi Rush, and the trademark? I guess, kind of. But saying that it looked like Jet Set Radio, like, this person seemed to have a connection or a source that told them that. Unless it was some crazy speculation. But at least that was the first person that I saw, at least, that made the connection between Tango and Hi-Fi Rush. And then there was a later tweet, right, by Bill Kun. I think I pronounced that right. Again, linked in the description below. This was the day before the Developer Direct. In the early morning, so about 1 a.m. PT on the 24th of January, they posted on Twitter the following. A new game from Bethesda cross Tango Gameworks will be announced and or released soon, probably in Xbox and Bethesda Developer Direct event. Name of the game, Hi-Fi Rush Project Hibiki, will come in Standard and Deluxe Edition. Game is rated ESRB Teen Peggy 12. So this was, as I said, before the event. And whether this person, again, whether this was a legitimate leak or source, I can't tell you. But again, there was another person before the post on Resetera that formed the basis of my previous video yesterday that said Hi-Fi Rush was being made by Tango Gameworks and it was going to be announced at Developer Direct and it was going to be released later that day. So then after all of those different things, you had that person on Resetera, Horns, a few hours before the developer direct, again stressing after all the other pieces of information that I presented before, then go on to say that, yeah, I heard Tango Gameworks is going to be putting out something later that day that you could play, and that it was going to be Hi-Fi Rush. So this person's credible leak that I described as in the previous video, in all likelihood, based on all the other things that were posted before, is probably this person just pulling together logical conclusions from what they've already seen on the internet. What Jeff Grubb already said, what Rand already said, what these other people on Reddit and Twitter already said. With all of that in context, it was, to me, and what I believe now, it was more just a conclusion that they drew, rather than an actual source that they had. And as a result of that, the person pretty much has no credibility. So what they said later about Starfield being in a bad shape, about Microsoft being worried about losing money and needing Xbox and Bethesda to release Starfield in this fiscal year, no credibility to that. Really, at that stage, it is just an internet rumor by someone that happened to pull two and two together before the developer direct about Hi-Fi Rush. Really, that is it. And if you even look into what they said about the losses that Azure made by Microsoft specifically, that it lost billions of dollars. There was an internal document in December of last year that was conducted and made by Google employees, which already said that Azure, by the end of the 2022 fiscal year, was going to be losing about $3 billion on Azure. It was still making a ton of money, a lot of revenue, and the revenue went up, but the operating costs were so high that they were going to lose money. But then there are other analysts which actually disputed that fact and said, well, actually, no, we don't actually believe that Microsoft is losing money on Azure. So again, that was another thing that this person, Horns on Resetera, probably pulled from to make their leak and their statement sound more credible. So that is everything literally that I could find about what probably led up to this person's post on Resetera. So TLDR, it is probably fake. I shouldn't have described it as a credible leak, and I should have done this research beforehand. It is sometimes hard when something is said in a podcast at 40 minutes in, and there's a bunch of random Reddit leaks and whatever. It's hard sometimes to see everything, but it's not an excuse. So I am sorry. I really am, and I'm going to keep trying my best. But if there's any other mistakes that I made in this video, please do let me know. I will always issue corrections. I will always make sure that I say I'm sorry if I do make major mistakes like that, especially. So yeah, this has been Lone. Please take care of yourselves, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.